Hi, I'm Megan.
I'm Colin, and this is Pet Sitter Confessional,
an open and honest discussion about life as a pet sitter.
brought to you by Time to Pet and Pet Perennials. House sitting and travel international house sitting is always a topic of interest, especially for the number of different ways that people can approach it. And it certainly has been yet another interesting year for that side of not just house sitting, but also pet care. And so we're really excited to have Kylie Fuad on, owner of Aussie House Sitters and House Sitters America, to talk about kind of the state of the industry, how things have changed, and what it means to be more involved and how to get started. So Kylie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks for having me. Well, I live in a lovely regional city called Lismore in northern New South Wales in Australia, part of the Northern Rivers region on Bundjalung country, our local mob here. And it's a little piece of paradise. I live on 5 acres, have little cattle for neighbours, 3 cats and a dog. 2 scary teenagers. Well, they're not too scary, but they have their moments. And we run a small business of house sitting website. So we have Aussie House Sitters and House Sitters America.
And I would love to know how you got started with those and where the idea or need came for those.
About 17 years ago, I was working in the Northern Territory in the middle of Australia, absolutely loving it. But looking at wanting to move into town or try and travel a bit more, but we didn't have a lot of money. And we looked at the idea of house sitting. So, what a cool idea that you could go to someone's house and look after their house and their pets for a fortnight or a month and then go back to work, because we were living remotely at the time and our families were on the East Coast. And so to be able to come back and stay was really expensive. Just flying was really expensive. And my partner, Nick, thought, okay, there's something in this, and had a bit of a look. It was, in the olden days where the internet was just kind of starting to take off, and he couldn't really find anything in Australia that was a website to support that. And he's such an ideas man. He thought, I think there's a business in this. So he, got very excited and worked with a web developer to create a very basic website at the time. And bit by bit, eventually it started taking off. And house sitting has just seemed to get more and more popular. And so over time, he's expanded, not only having an Aussie house sitters for house sitters in Australia, but he's branched out with other websites. And so House Sitters America was one of those. And so it's been quite a journey from just, wanting to do something for us to be able to travel, to then create a website that's kind of taken a whole life of its own. I used to be a full-time teacher, but now I'm living the high life working, for my own business. So, for us as a couple, it's pretty cool. And, and it's just been amazing to see that, especially over the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, that house sitting has really taken off. Everywhere. We live in Australia, so I guess we're closest to the Australian market. But definitely it's grown, in so many places, and it just seems to be, especially with the sharing economy, I guess, it's so much easier to be able to meet up with people online to organise things like house sitting. And it's such a great way to travel or live rent-free. So, it's been a really cool journey from literally he would sit in the laundry next to the kitty litter. He had a desk and a computer, and we bought a little screen for $10 from a garage sale, and that was his office to start off with. Wow. And now we've got a little office building, a space in Lismore, and we employ a small group of local people. So, it's been a pretty wild ride the last 17 years.
You had mentioned, as far as one of the reasons why house sitting has really taken off the last 5 years is because of the prevalence of the sharing economy. And so I was curious, what kind of house sitting you guys book and work through on your websites? Is it a value for value service, or is it more of a paid service?
Yeah, so on our website, Aussie House Sitters, our house sitters pay to be a member. And for that, they have a sitter profile for 12 months and they can apply for any house sitting jobs. But their house sitting jobs aren't paid. So basically, our house sitters on Aussie House Sitters, they do that in return for free accommodation. And homeowners using our site, they actually don't pay. They can place a free ad, or they can, browse the sitters list and contact sitters directly. Our thinking behind that model was we wanted to, if we were charging the house sitters, we wanted to make sure that they had plenty of house sitting jobs. And we felt that by not charging the homeowners, that would hopefully lead to more homeowners using our site, which means more ads for the house sitters, which has certainly turned out that way, which is fantastic. So, but yes, our house sitters don't usually get paid. If it is a big ask, we do have some rural properties and some farms, and from time to time, there'll be house sitters who might be taking care of acreage or a small farm, and sometimes they will be paid. It's usually a nominal amount. It's not like our house sitters do it, for the money. They do it for the lifestyle, to live rent-free or to travel around Australia. So basically the sitters pay to be a member, but all of the negotiating and all of the house sitting jobs that happen to and fro, there's not usually any money that exchanges hands. Obviously, if it's a long sit, then the house sitter might need to cover heating or electricity or, different costs. But that's all negotiated between the owner and the sitter, because every owner is different and they will, ask for different things from their house sitter.
How do you think having that more value for value interaction, how does that impact the relationship in that transaction between the owner and the house sitter?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know whether it's because of that, but we do find that there seems to be a real connection between the sitter and the owners, especially when it works really well. And some owners will get the same house sitters time and time again. And the animal part of it is actually huge, which, I'm not surprised in a way. We recently interviewed some of our house sitters to get some feedback for them to, help other people who are interested in house sitting and learning about it. And, going through all of the footage, the amount of times they talked about the animals they looked after and the connections and the story, if you ask them for a story, they all had these stories that were just adorable, and mostly about the animals. So it's interesting. It does seem like it has more of a community, say like an online house sitting community feel, because it's not like an actual job. It's I guess it's like a relationship where the owner and the sitter are negotiating with each other, and the sitter is, given a house for free, which is, something that they really treat with respect and care, and also having someone's animals, and they're not getting paid to do it. So it's interesting. It does feel like there's certainly a sense of that kind of sharing community, rather than using the website to get jobs, house sitting paid jobs, if you know what I mean. It feels like that, and not to take away from that, because there's certainly a market and a place for that as well. And with House Sitters America, we actually have changed our model to include house and pet sitters who get paid, because in Australia it's quite different. It's much more of people are very relaxed, I guess, to share, live in each other's homes. It doesn't seem to be too much of a drama. But in the US, it's a culturally very different place, and there's a lot more people who actually feel better about paying a sitter because they feel like they're getting someone who's experienced and professional, and they feel more comfortable having them in their home. So that's something we've noticed, a difference between house sitting in Australia and house sitting in America, is there does seem to be a lot more house and pet sitters who do get paid. And so we've tried to adjust our site to give a space for those people as well.
Oh, that's fascinating. When I think of that shared economy, I feel like you get that tight relationship because each party has a vested interest in it going well, right? They've each put they've put something up to share with the other person. There's the house, and then there's the services on top of that. So they're working together to meet a common goal, and I can really see how that would really foster some really lifelong relationships between them, or at least some very positive feelings and interactions that they have. As I'm sure they can go back to the same sits time and time again.
Yeah, exactly. And that seems to be what happens a lot. And we've also got a lot of grey nomads cruising around in their caravans up and down the East Coast predominantly, retirees. And they will go back to the same house sit, almost year in, year out. And, sometimes they'll work their way from Sydney up to Queensland, North Queensland, back down again. And just kind of keep going up and down and getting new house sits, and going back to other people who, once it's their time for their annual holiday again, well, they just make sure that they're back in that place, that place, so that they're there to house sit for them again. So, yeah, definitely it seems to provide a really good way of house sitters, especially, to be able to go back to the same house and the same animals, and that's great. I mean, I've got 3 cats and a dog. I know what it's like. The cats are pretty cruisy, but, we got house sitters in when the puppy was only really small, and I'd never owned a dog before, and she was this adorable, tiny little thing. And we were so stressed leaving her here. We got a lovely house sitting couple who were grey nomads travelling up and down, had heaps of experience with animals, and they just adored her. I think she had the best week of just constant attention and love the whole time. And it's really special. And the way the house sitters talked about my animals just after a week of being with them was really lovely. And then I was saying, oh, we'll come back, we'd love to look after Sweetie again if you go away. And, a lot of the time it seems to be not necessarily about the house. I mean, the houses are great, and some people obviously have beautiful houses, and we've got a pool. So, that was really nice. But, they just kept saying, oh, we want to come back and, hang out with Sweetie, which is so cute.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, do you find the people who use your sites on both of them, are they more full-time or more part-time in the house sits that they're looking for?
We really get a mix of both. There's a lot of people who do it pretty much full-time, especially if they are trying to live rent-free, and that they'll be constantly looking for long-term sits to try and get back to back to back as much as possible. Also, people travelling, some people who are, we've got a few people who are permanent house sitters. They've left their day jobs and, they work a bit online, but they literally go house sit to house sit. So they try and look for the longer term house sit. But we've also got quite a few people who do it because it's a nice lifestyle to do every now and then. Or if they want to travel, it's quite cheap, in terms of you pay your yearly membership fee and that's it. So you can stay somewhere for 3 weeks, and all you have to do is afford to get yourself there. So, and sometimes, with people's work schedules, they can't necessarily house sit all the time. So definitely we get a really big mix. But we do, I think, we're seeing more and more people really choosing house and pet sitting as a lifestyle and really working their paid work or what they do for a day job around that. And I guess, so many people are able to work online now. So it's kind of the perfect setup if you want a bit of an adventurous life. Being a house sitter for a few years is pretty cool. You can live in all kinds of places like a local and meet, different furry friends. And, I think it's an interesting thing to see it grow and evolve in terms of maybe in the past people would have done it here and there, but now it just seems so much more like a lifestyle choice that people can actually live that life if they want to.
Have you heard about Time to Pet? Doug from Bad to the Bone Pet Care has this to say.
Time to Pet has made managing my team and clients so much easier. Our clients love the easy-to-use app and scheduling features, and our sitters love being able to have all of their information organized and easily accessible. My favorite feature is the instant messaging. By keeping conversations on Time to Pet, we are able to monitor our team and ensure nothing ever falls through the cracks.
If you are looking for new pet sitting software for your business, give Time to Pet a try. As a listener of Pet Sitter Confessional, you'll get 50% off your first 3 months when you sign up at timetopet.com/confessional. Well, and you mentioned they're able to have more flexibility in their day jobs. What are some ways that you have seen people make money while they are travel house sitting on more full-time basis?
Well, there are some people who work online, so they work. They can work while they're on a house sit, say, in more of a writing capacity, say journalism or any kind of job where all you need is your laptop, your emails and some internet to be able to keep working. But also, there's interesting things like, hairdressers who go to different places and, they might set up doing a few haircuts here and there to pay their way. So it's it's kind of really varied. And a lot of people too will sometimes house sit. Some people actually still work their day job, especially if they're in the same place. For example, if they're living in Sydney and they're trying to save money, then they might look at house sitting on a regular basis, but that would still mean doing their day job and coming home in the afternoon to the animals. But, there's some homeowners who actually specify that they want someone who works from home or only works limited hours because their animal needs mean that they like to have the house sitter, with their animals a lot more. And I guess, a lot of people use it for travel, so they're not really needing to make too much money while they're on the travel side of it. And then they'll go back and make some money and then start all over again.
I guess it really is dependent on the goals and purposes of the house sitter who's looking for which kind of house it's. And you're right, if they're trying to string back to back to back to back to back for extended periods of time, obviously they're going to have a different lifestyle and different setup. And you mentioned how it is kind of transforming into more of a lifestyle thing than these maybe one-offs where it was 5-10 years ago.
Definitely. I mean, we've just doing these interviews with some experienced house sitters. They've been house sitting pretty much full time for the last 4 years. And like if there's a space, they'll go stay with family, or they might get an Airbnb for a week to tide them over. But basically, house sitting around Australia has been their life for the last four years, which is quite amazing, really. And they had some interesting stories, and right from the west coast of Australia to the east coast, which is quite a long way. So they've, been all around, and it's really interesting. I think that, now that, and I guess we've all witnessed it too with COVID, so many people are working more from home because they kind of have had to. And so it's almost like it's opened up a way of thinking that, oh my goodness, there is so much of our jobs we can do from home because we've just had to out of necessity. So, and, a lot of bosses are realising that, people are working really well from home. This could be a really good lifestyle option. I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to go back to the office 8 till 5 every single day. I think it'll have turned a corner, and who knows, we might see even more people choosing house sitting as a lifestyle because, thinking outside the square now that we've got that permission to do so, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and that was definitely a question I wanted to pose to you. You've got these two big websites, one focused on the house sitting in Australia, the other one looking here in America. How have you sensed the house sitting industry and community change over the last 18 months to 2 years with COVID and everything going on? I know you've mentioned a few things already, but what's the sense that you're getting from both house sitters and house owners?
Originally, when it all started happening, especially kicking off in Australia and the US, our memberships just stopped. Income stopped. It was just everything came to a standstill, and it's quite a scary time, really, and watching everything going on in the world, and on the one hand, feeling concern for people and their health and their safety, and also looking at are we ever going to be able to have that same feeling of travel, again, which I mean, Nick and I love travel. That's why we're in this industry. So, and there's so many, especially our house, everyone, because our owners are traveling too. It was really challenging time for a lot of our members and for us. We decided to give all of our house sitting members 6 months extension for free of their memberships because we knew, for at least 6 months nothing was going to happen. And we've noticed this year there's certainly been more house sitters joining up again and feeling more confident about, house sitting again. I know in Australia, once we had a good run for a little while, and all of a sudden everyone was wanting to travel. So we were inundated with homeowners all wanting to go away and needing house sitters. It's one of those rare times. Usually there's so many house sitters and there's so many and they're all kind of not fighting, but, competing for jobs, especially in the more sought after areas that can be quite competitive. But because so many people on the house sitting side, with things so uncertain, then they weren't house sitting as much at the moment because it was just really unreliable. Because they know, if the borders shut, house sitting jobs would just, you just couldn't do them. So we found that all of a sudden we had all these homeowners and kind of not even really enough house sitters, or, the owners were still trying to, we need someone, and they were really good house sitting jobs. But I think it's going to and of course now in Australia things have gone difficult again, and we've got the Delta strain here now, so we've got lockdowns all over the place. And so I think, for the rest of this year, it's certainly going to be quite quiet. It's a very uncertain time for a house sitter, and you certainly would be very difficult to be trying to live that house sitting lifestyle when things are just so they can change in a day or in hours. Sometimes when the different state governments will close borders, they will just close them. And there's a lot of talk about vaccines and a lot of issues with AstraZeneca or Pfizer, and then Moderna's coming to Australia in a month. So I noticed that the government's rhetoric lately has been wanting to make Christmas normal. So I know we've had a lot of talk in the office in terms of when do we really look at kicking things off again. And of course, we'll be watching the vaccine rollout. But I'm kind of thinking that it's August now, it'll be spring in September. Probably by October, November, maybe we'll look at, hopefully, our house sitting members able to have some really great house sitting jobs over the summer. Hopefully, and again, it's like everything. It depends on what happens with the vaccine rollout and, how many people are willing to do that, so that, things can open up again a little bit more close to normal, but enough for us to be able to travel again. So I at the moment for house sitters, it's a very uncertain place. So a lot of them aren't taking that on at the moment. But hopefully by summer, there'll be opportunities to travel and get some sun.
Yeah, I know in the pet sitting industry, we're all trying to figure out where that new quote unquote normal is. What does that look like? What's the threshold? How high is the high? How low is the low going to be for a number of clients and requests and bookings? And I could imagine it's probably even more volatile for house sitting, and given how quickly restrictions can change and how people tend to plan those longer trips. They plan them for a while in advance. They don't tend to be very last minute. So trying to forecast 6-8 months down the road gets really tricky whenever you're the homeowner. And then, I can see how you would have this kind of imbalance of supply and demand of homeowners versus house sitters trying to swing back and forth between who's available for what.
Exactly right. And I think, moving forward, a lot of house sitters are having to have another option, whereas they might have been a bit more relaxed, moving house sit to house sit, not worrying so much about, we might need accommodation for a week here or a week there. But I think a lot of house sitters now have, they have a plan B. So, because it is much more possible that a job that they're going to could be cancelled and they'll need somewhere to live, basically. So I think that kind of planning is factoring more now than it used to. It used to be much more of a relaxed gypsy, lifestyle. But now it's, you really need a plan B just in case.
Yeah, I know several house sitters who, the gap stays would be in a hotel or an Airbnb. But if you are unable to travel then to the next state over or to the next place because of certain lockdowns, all of a sudden everything gets thrown out. And so I had known a few who went out and had actually gotten small RVs. And I think you had mentioned that a little bit earlier too.
Yes.
Of that was that kind of this backup. Like, okay, we used to have a car. Now we're just going to drive everywhere in an RV so that if stuff really goes, we can just pull over and live there for a while.
Exactly right. And, there's so many national parks all around here, like in Australia. It's unreal. And I remember when I travelled a few years ago, we got the camping book, which is amazing. This massive book that just tells you all of the free camping places to go all around Australia, and with maps, and each one, it says whether there's toilets or shower facilities or a fireplace or internet. And so that is a really good resort. So a lot of house sitters, they can, if they're cancelled, well, at least they've got a house on wheels and it's not going to be too expensive for them to find a really nice place to set up camp for a little while.
There's been a lot of changes over the last several years, and it still sounds like many things are in flux. But if somebody's interested in kind of dipping their toe into the world of house sitting, what are some tips or what are some advice you would give to them in this world of COVID and making themselves stand out?
Well, I think it's really important, if you haven't house sat before, to try and get a couple of house sitting jobs for friends. Just build up some references, because a lot of homeowners will want to see evidence that you're a good house sitter. So that's a good idea. Get your mates to, if you can house sit for friends, and then they'll write you a review. That at least gets you started. Writing a really good sitter profile with a nice photo is really important. Clear and to the point, and really focusing on your strength and why you want to be a house sitter. Because I think a lot of the success of house sitting is matching up the right sitter with the right owner. And so there's no point going for a job if someone is, has this amazing garden that has all of these, high-level needs for their plants, etc. If you're a dog person and you're really not very good at gardening, and vice versa. So, honestly, I think the best thing to do as a house sitter is be yourself, and that's okay. if you adore animals, well, then you plaster all over your sitter profile how great you are with animals, experience with animals, because then you'll get those jobs that have those lovely animals for you to care for. But and having said that, if you're a keen gardener, put that in your profile, because then you'll end up with the right house sit. Because especially with our model, people aren't getting paid. Yes, they're getting free accommodation, but at the end of the day, you're not getting paid for what you're doing for the owner. So it's really important that it's a really positive experience for you. So I think the more you can be upfront and honest about yourself and your own skills and your own experience and what you will get out of house sitting, will just mean that you will find the right house sitting jobs for you that you will really enjoy. The owners will love having you because you'll do such a great job. You'll get more great reviews, and then you'll go on to do more jobs in different places, but those ones that really, are just right for you. They're all different. Some people are mad clean freaks, and they just love cleaning the house every day. That's not me. I'm really good with animals. So, I would pick a job looking after the animals, not necessarily the neat freaks. So I think, just being yourself, being honest, trying to get some experience and not being afraid to ask questions. Ask someone who's done house sitting for a while, what they think. The most helpful advice I think that we've ever experienced, and we've been trying to collate that for our site, for our new members, is from experienced house sitters who have done lots of different jobs and they've learnt all the pitfalls in that process, and they can kind of go, look, this is what I recommend, this is what I don't recommend. So, information is power. Communication is really important. And a really positive attitude. House sitting is a very, very cool thing to do. You get to live in different places. You get to experience different homes and different pets. It's actually a real gift for people who are able to, even if you just spend a year or two doing it, it's a pretty amazing experience. So I think, just having that positive experience about this new adventure and learning as you go, not being afraid to change things up and kind of go, all right, well, maybe that sit didn't go that well and this is why, and I'll learn that for the next one.
You said that phrase of be honest with yourself about the kind of sit that you'd want. And I think that's really powerful because, especially when we're looking at these kind of opportunities, there's this tendency to say, yes, I can do anything and everything. Of course, I'll take on your 16 horses. And of course, I'll take on this. And of course, I'll take on that and these delicate orchids that you have. But if it's not within your strengths, you're just setting yourself up to get that bad review or to have it not go quite as you expected and not be able to pull off the best service and have the best experience possible, not just for yourself, but also for the owners. And so really taking some time to think about what would I love to do in exchange to be in this different location. And that may take some trial and error. And I love your advice of, start local, work with family and friends and build from there. And it's some of those things of you're not going to know until you try, and not going to know until you start trying to put on some different situations. But to just be honest with yourself again about things that you like, things that you enjoy doing, things where your strengths are, and really lean into those, because then the more focused you can be, the more likely you are to be connected with somebody who's also looking for that same thing.
Exactly. And then you've got the most chance to be a really successful house sitting relationship between yourself as the house and pet sitter and the owner. And there's, again, even that more chance that they will ask you back, which is a fabulous. If you can get recurring house sits with the same house and the same animals, then it's like they know you, the setup. It's not like starting over again, which is ideal, really. If the homeowner finds a house sitter they really like, they'll want them to come back time and time again, and that's a dream for a house sitter.
Now, for the homeowner side of things, I was curious how you've seen maybe homeowner expectations change, or what exactly they are looking for when that you see them reviewing or selecting house sitters?
Well, it's quite fascinating because every homeowner is very different. And what some people expect compared to others is chalk and cheese. Like it's really quite amazing. So it's really important for the sitters to, find out, ask questions, get things written down from your homeowner. Don't just expect even things as little as using a tomato sauce in the cupboard.
Yes.
Sometimes that's completely fine. And I know whenever I have house sitters, I'm like, help yourself, like whatever's left in the fridge, go for it. Whatever's in the cupboard, go for it, But, I know there are other homeowners who will, email us and say they used up extra tissues and the bottle of toilet. Extra toilet paper and tomato sauce. So, you never quite know. It's quite an interesting, very interesting. So I guess the main thing is we've seen the whole spectrum, and depending on what the homeowner's needs are, some will be really focused on animal care, some will be really focused on the home care, some will be very focused on the garden care. They seem to be three standout. And if you look at different jobs, a lot of them you could kind of put in one of those categories. So obviously the expectations are quite different with all of those homeowners. Some homeowners are very prescriptive about their animals, and I mean very prescriptive, eating this at a certain time, spending this much time with the animal, sleep in this, So again, those are the kind of things that, whereas other homeowners, like myself, when I get, except for the dog, because, of course, she's the queen of the house. But the three cats was kind of like, there's their food, just keep them alive. They'll do their own thing. You just have a really nice week at my house, get in the pool and just feed the cats and make sure, So I've seen the whole spectrum of homeowners. Everyone will have different expectations. So the really important thing is you just find that out when you're applying for a job. So, I know that some of the house sitters have compiled, I think one of them, she said she's got a list of 42 questions that she makes sure are answered. And she doesn't necessarily give it to the homeowner and can you answer all of these, please? But in emails back and forward, in phone calls, she makes sure that all of those 42 questions are addressed. And so that way she has a very clear understanding of what type of house it is going to be, what the owner's expectations are. And that way then she can decide whether or not it's a sit for her. And it is, she has very good, strict parameters around knowing what is expected. It's really tricky as a house sitter if you're not quite sure, especially if something happens to an animal. That can be pretty stressful. If you're not quite sure what the owner would want you to do in terms of something, and we all live in houses. Things go wrong. It's no one's fault. Sometimes a tap bursts, or pool overflows because it's raining too hard too quickly. So things can come up because it's life, and the more that you can, just be really clear at the outset with that specific homeowner, what their expectations are, what they need, because guaranteed you go to the next house sitting job and that owner will have a very different list of expectations.
Pet Perennials makes it easy as 1, 2, 3 to send a heartfelt condolence gift directly to someone with a broken heart. They have this awesome direct client gift service that takes the effort off of us and ensures a thoughtful, personalized Simply gift reaches our client or employee. All gift packages, including handwritten card, colorful gift wrap, and shipping fees across the US and Canada. They're releasing an array of milestone gifts and greeting cards throughout the rest of the year that can be sent to celebrate birthdays, extend get well wishes, and welcome new or rescued pets. They also have a few gift options in case you need to send a Simply gift in memory of a special human client. If you're interested, register for a free account to receive discounted package pricing rather than pay consumer prices. Since the service is leveraged on an as-need basis, there are no monthly or annual obligations or minimum purchases. Learn more and register at petperennials.com/pages/GPS and enter the referral code PSC. You'll be given a unique coupon code to save $2 off any of their packages that you send in your first 90 days. Yes, I definitely love that advice for preparing for the house sit. Again, we're trying to prepare ourselves for success. And so asking the homeowner, how would you handle this? Do you have a recommended service technician that you'd like to come over? Who do you like to do your repairs?
Exactly.
Yeah, and asking those. And sometimes you may feel like, oh, I don't need to ask that. I know how to handle it. It's like, okay, well, but that you might not handle it the same way that the owner would. Like, would they like you to solve it with super glue and duct tape, or would they actually want you to solve it by getting it fixed properly by the time they
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And even simple things, like things you can think of, like, where is it okay for me to put my clothes? Is there a section in the wardrobe for me to put my clothes or not? Because even little things like that, it is their house. So, sometimes people will, or, like I know some house sitters who they take their own bedding with them. They make up the bed themselves with their own bedding and they go away. So they're not even using the owner's bed sheets or quilt or anything. So, it's like all those things that you maybe don't necessarily think of when you're living in your own space. You're living in someone else's space and they come back. Yeah, it's just interesting, how much. Another thing, like if you're staying somewhere that is, for example, either really hot or really cold, in terms of the heating or the cooling, because that all needs to be really clearly understood at the beginning of a house sit. Am I going to pay for the air conditioning cost? Or the homeowner might say, I'm happy to pay $100 worth of air conditioning, but then anything over that, you're responsible for. Those are the kind of, those are the kind of details that can really make the difference between a really good experience and when the owner comes home, they're really happy and you get a great review and, it's a great experience. Or someone saying they use this amount of electricity, it's cost me this much, I want them to pay for it. But then the sitter didn't know that they had to pay for it. And then that's when things can get a bit stressful. And no one wants that when you've just done a house sit. You don't want to leave and then have to deal with all of that. That's be stressful for everyone involved. So, all those little details are really important to kind of work out before the sit.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things of in any good relationship, you want to have as few unspoken expectations as possible. You want to lay them all laid out there so that everyone knows what's going on. And sometimes those conversations can be a little uncomfortable to have, especially if you're brand new to this, of going, well, how much are you going to pay? And can I eat your food? And where can I sleep? And those may seem like, well, I'll just figure it out kind of questions, but you don't want to have to quote unquote figure it out. You want it to be known and both parties agreeing on how it's going to go forward. Because when you don't figure it out, or when something does happen and then you have to make assumptions because you can't get a hold of the homeowner or whatever, you just don't want to be in that situation. Some of that takes experience of knowing what kind of questions to ask or what kind of questions you need to ask to be successful. And some of it's just thinking through, okay, if I was having somebody come into my home, what are some things that I would like them to know? And I need to ask those so that I can be working with this person to have the best experience possible.
Exactly. And I think that a huge percentage of the work to ensure a successful house sit is done before the house sit even starts, because that is a big part of that communication is great, because even as a homeowner, that makes you feel reassured. I know I've engaged house sitters quite a few times through our website, and I love it when house sitters ask me questions, because it makes me know that they care, they want to do a good job. It also helps me because sometimes I forget to tell them things, and so I'm like, I'm really glad you asked that, because I want to make sure I'm giving you all the information you need about my house, and sometimes I forget that. And we do on our site, we have like a handy house sitting form that if homeowners want to, they can print out and they can write information about things and leave it at the house for those old school people like me who like paper and, print out. But really, yeah, it's like the more you can ask, the more both the homeowner and the house sitter are on the same page before the house sitting job even starts. The chances are once you're there, the hard work is over in a way. It's like now you've got the house and the animals and you do your thing and you have that confidence and security that you know what's expected of you. You know how to be in that space with those animals in the garden, do a good job. And also for the homeowner, they can drive off or fly off feeling really happy that they've got the right person. And it, like you said before, it really is a two-way thing. It's a relationship. So communication is really important in every relationship. And, when you think about it, house sitters are really fortunate. And also, given the responsibility of taking care of someone's really beloved animals, home, plants, so it's great that that relationship can be really strong in terms of the communication, so that the owner can go away knowing they don't have to worry about their gorgeous little dog or cat. They're going to be fine because the sitter's asked all the questions and they're given all the information. So, yeah, I think from our experience, and of course we get emails on the site. We've got a designated officer who deals with any issues that arise from house sitting jobs. And look, 9 times out of 10, it would have been solved if those things had been discussed. And in writing, it's a really good piece of advice. Like, actually have things written down. Like our website, we have online communication private, so you don't have to share your email. You just log into the site and you can message each other until you feel comfortable. And that way everything's there. A record of everything is there. So if you're talking on the phone, that's good in terms of like developing a relationship. But dealing with the details of who's paying for what, or pet care, etc. So great to have that written down that you can refer to. And also then, in case if something does happen where an owner does say, hey, I thought the house sitter was going to do A, but they did B, you've got that right there to say, hey, this was the email discussion we had and this is the message I got and this is what I was referring to. So, that's really helpful, I think, to be able to have that communication, have it recorded so that both parties can refer to that whenever they need to.
Yeah, there's the cover your butt side of things, and then there's the I completely forgot how many cups of food this dog gets. So it does help you on both ends when you're actually doing the sit.
Exactly, you can only remember so many things.
Now I know you're managing these two big websites, and you have also, I'm pretty sure, a crystal ball in your office, and so I would like for you to talk about maybe what you see the future looking like for house sitting, or maybe what you hope it is moving forward.
Well, I honestly think, especially in Australia, that once there are more vaccines and we are getting closer to the summer, I think we are going to see so many people wanting to travel. It already happened a little bit this year until we got another wave. Honestly, I just think it's going to nuts. It might take a little bit longer for house sitters to feel reassured to be able to do that on a more permanent basis again, like they were doing a couple of years ago. But honestly, I see that happen again, most definitely. I think that we are all going to be, I don't know, I guess I took it for granted. I went to Italy. I travel quite a bit with work around Australia. I just took it for granted. And the last year and a half of not being able to go anywhere, my husband and I, we snuck to Cairns 4 nights. We just got it in before borders closed. We were so lucky. And I think there are so many other people like me who just love travel. And as soon as it is safe to do so, I think there are going to be people traveling everywhere. And I think you'll find it's going to be quite expensive to do. And house sitting is a really, really great option because of the financial side of it. You know, there's going to be so many people who are traveling. There's going to be so many house sitting jobs that are going to be coming up. So I hope to see, and also I just think it's a great model that you know, environmentally much better because it's like you're using up extra resources at a hotel. You know, you're staying in a home that's already set up. You know, you're looking after animals that are already there. So sustainably, I think it's a really good thing to do. So I just feel like house sitting as a travel lifestyle model is only going to get bigger and better into the future. At least I hope, because I really, really want to go to Italy again. Really, really do.
Well, yeah, and I think we're all right there joining with you, thinking and looking ahead, going, okay, people are going to travel at some point in the future. What does that look like? In what numbers? Where are they able to travel? And so, how can we? What are ways that we can set ourselves up for success to be able to be a part of that? In that, getting started now, working on our profile. That's doing some basic sits in our area. That's networking with other people and figuring out what we want and just starting so that when opportunities do come up, we can take advantage of those. Because whether that's next month or whether that's early next year, you know, no one's quite sure, but there are things we can be doing now to prepare for that.
And also I think that the domestic side of things in terms of, I know there are some global house sitting companies, but I know what I found in Australia with, you know, I think it's going to take a while before international travel is really happening again.
Yeah.
Especially on a big scale. So a lot of people are going to be still wanting to travel, but they're going to be exploring their own countries. And in terms of having a domestic house sitting website, all of the jobs are in that one country. So I think that's going to be more of an option at the moment in terms of house sitting, is that you're going to, I mean, we already saw earlier this year, I spent a lot of time out in the Northern Territory in the middle of Australia and visited Uluru a few times, and I worked out there in the desert. And, you know, there'd be heaps of tourists, all European, all Asian tourists. You'd hardly ever see any Aussies. So many people I spoke to had never been to the centre. And earlier this year, there was a huge influx of Australians all going to the Red Centre because they couldn't go overseas anymore. So I think, and it's expensive to go to the middle of Australia, you know, because I don't know why they make it very expensive to fly there and very cheap to Bali. But I think that's what is going to be moving forward, travel and house sitting in particular, will be domestic travel. It'll be domestic house sitting. Yeah. You know, it'll be, you know, if you want to travel around Australia, well, you can house sit around Australia doing different jobs. If you want to get out of your state in the US and have a road trip, you know, go and live in some other spots, you know, you go and chase the California sun or something, you know, like I think that's going to be the next phase of travel, especially in house sitting, will be domestic house sitting, not, you know, flying overseas. That's it. I think it's going to be for a little while longer. We'll all be learning to love and explore our own countries.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating that you say that, because I know here in the States, several places are really pushing, several states in local tourist areas where they usually had a lot of people coming in. They're now changing a lot of their marketing to the locals and trying to push, you know, what we call staycations, where you don't go too far from your home. And
exactly,
and where they're going, well, we still, the beaches are still beautiful. You might not be able to come out of state to see them. So how about let's try and attract the locals who may have avoided them previously because that's where all the tourists go. Well, now let's try and pull local dollars and local people over there. So I think that's really interesting that you're seeing that as well. And so for us to stay in tune to those opportunities, those options, and to start seeking some of those things out and just seeing what options we have around us.
Definitely. I think that it's going to be that way for a little while, where we'll be we'll be looking at, having staycations, like traveling. It's actually made me think of things because I've always been a more travel further away. I live in New South Wales. I grew up in Tamworth, which is about 6 hours west from where I am. And I've never been further west than that. And there's these amazing towns in, out regional areas with, and I'd loved my time in the desert, right in the centre of Australia, but never thought to drive 2 hours west from where I grew up. And, it's only just now that we've gone, oh, well, actually, we plan all of our trips going to Queensland or Northern Territory or down to Melbourne in Victoria. That's very uncertain. There's all of these amazing places in New South Wales at my own home state that I have never been before. Let's pack the car and let's go for a drive. So, and I think it's a lot of people are kind of, exploring places closer to home. And it's kind of like, I think that aspect is a really cool thing because you're getting to appreciate the beauties, and the great places in your local area. There's great places all around the world, but sometimes we forget what's next door because it just seems next door. Yeah.
Kylie, I have really enjoyed our conversation and you sharing your optimism for the future of house sitting and how we can take advantage of that, how we can be prepared for that, and what kind of expectations we can help share and how to set ourselves up for success. But I know that there's a whole lot more here and people are going to have a lot of questions and they're interested in getting connected. So where can listeners go to learn more about house sitting, get connected with you, and pick your brain on stuff when you're not dealing with two scary teenagers?
Yes, it's a nice escape to have from the scary teenagers. Well, housesittersamerica.com and aussiehousitters.com.au are two websites depending on what you're interested in. We've got lots of resources on there that people can check out. And we also have Facebook pages, Instagram accounts. So if you just Google Aussie House Sitters or House Sitters America, you'll be able to find all of those. And I know that there's lots of resources around us as well. There's lots of Facebook house sitting. There's a house sitting worldwide Facebook group run by a couple of our members who are also members of other sites. They're fantastic guys. That's a really cool online community of house sitters where people share stories and ask questions, which is really great. So I guess, get on the website and then start Googling and who knows where you'll end up.
Yeah, just start doing some of that basic research. Absolutely. Kylie, again, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's so nice to be able to talk about travel. We're in a 7-day lockdown, so I'm working from home and I'm just, talking to you and imagining all the places that I can go to now. Just very nice. Little escapism.
My big takeaway from my conversation with Kylie was the fact that the bulk of the work for any house sit starts before you even walk through the door. That preparation is everything. How true it is also for when we are running our businesses and when we are meeting with clients. Showing up with no idea of what's going on or who the client is or what their pet needs for the meet and greet really sets us back several steps. Having all of that ironed out before we even walk through the door really, A, shows our professionalism, but B, make sure that time that we have with that client for that very first time goes as smoothly as possible. And then little things like before you even walk through the door for the follow-up visit or throughout the visit, you review that information that allows you to remember what that code was, to remember the particulars about their training habits or their feeding regime. All of those little details really aren't so little in the end when they impact both the health and the kind of service that your clients come to expect from you. We want to thank our sponsors, Time to Pet and Pet Perennials, for making today's show possible, and we really want to thank you so much for listening. Let us know if you've ever thought about getting into house sitting, whether part-time or full-time, and if you are currently doing that, let us know how it's worked for you. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll be back again soon.